Today I'm going to talk about the death of Anne Heche. I covered it pretty extensively in a video before when I went to the accident scene and I was actually able to walk through the accident scene, through the carnage that her car left behind and in the front yard of that house. And it was fascinating to be there. And I covered what happened pretty extensively. So I got the other day, this is a copy of her autopsy report from the Coroner, the County of Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner. And this is her autopsy report. So what you're going to hear now are the details of her autopsy. I know some of you are groaning because you don't like it when I read autopsies, but I study beforehand and I get some interesting input from qualified professionals. And so if my pronunciation's a little off, bear with me. Going over the details of the accident, it happened on August 5th of 2022.
Bobby and Marla, it was amazing what happened out here. LA City Fire Department, I got to give it to them right off the bat. The men and women from this fire department, some of the most amazing. Vehicle into a structure, then that car catches fire. And when we say into a structure, I mean all the way in, almost coming out the other side. This house out here on Walgrove, right at the cross of Brookhaven, at Preston, you can see that T intersection. The best we can figure, that vehicle was on this street and made its way across, not stopping ever, through those hedges, through the front door, or through that front wall of this home, and lodged itself almost in the back. Then it caught fire. LA City Fire Department arriving here very quickly. They had this home with fire and knowing there is a vehicle inside there. Firefighters making an attack on that fire. Other firefighters trying to get into that building to get that driver out of that car.
Anne Heche was being removed from the crash scene. We've established the crash through the other video that I did. As she was being removed from the crash scene, she was filmed sitting up on the stretcher. That was something really bizarre.
And then the driver, well, LA City Fire Department, their paramedics pulled that driver from that vehicle. We have tape of that, and then basically had him on a gurney. We weren't sure what the situation was there on his condition, but then as he made his way over to the ambulance, you see it right there, he jumps up out of that gurney. It was horrific, scary for a moment for everybody watching.
What you're going to find out really strange is that she was pronounced dead 2 times. That I thought was fascinating. I'm going to get into that in the autopsy report. But she was filmed sitting up on the stretcher and struggling with firefighters while she was being wheeled into the ambulance, but lost consciousness soon afterwards. She was taken to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center for emergency care and then to the Grossman Burn Center in West Hills for specialized burn center care. On August 8th, this is 3 days later, a representative for her said that she was in a coma in critical condition and requiring medical ventilation for pulmonary injury sustained in the accident. The representative also said that prior reports that Heche was in stable condition were inaccurate. On August 11th, the representative said that Heche was not expected to survive the anoxic brain injury she sustained, but she was being kept on life support to determine if her organs were viable for donation, in accordance with her expressed wish to be an organ donor. Police had investigated the crash as a felony DUI collision, but said there would be no more investigative efforts after Heche was declared brain dead. On August 14th, it was announced that organ recipients had been found and that her body would undergo the organ donation procedure that day. To honor her organ donation, the hospital staff held an honor walk for Heche. That evening, her publicist announced that she had been peacefully taken off life support. And she was cremated, and her cremains are inurned at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And there's a really lovely picture of her, a photograph of her on the front of her crypt. And there's all sorts of theories. There's all sorts of, lots of conspiracy stuff about what happened to her because her death was so unusual. How she was filmed prior to that and other accidents, and how she sat up in the gurney, and possible projects that she was working on. They even say that the symbol that her hand is out in the photograph on her crypt is symbolic of some sort of secret society or some sort of scandalous conspiracy. Fascinating stuff if you wanted to go down that rabbit hole. What I'm going to do is go through the autopsy report and say I went through it already to make some notations for myself, but this is the actual physical report that I received from them. And what I'm going to do now is read what the report says. The body is identified by toe tags. Remember, this is long after her accident, after she was taken off life support. The body is not clothed, and whoever did this autopsy did not see the clothing. Rigor mortis has presumably been altered or abolished, as has livor mortis. She appears to be Caucasian, female, the stated age of 53 years old. 135 pounds and measures approximately 65 inches. That's 5'5". Well nourished and appropriately developed for her age. Not embalmed. Blue eyes, normal eyes. There's no blood vessels or anything in her eyes, eyeballs. Petechial hemorrhage, no. Hair blonde, medium length. Balding is absent. Mustache is absent. Beard is absent. Teeth present. Dentures absent. Scars absent. Tattoos present. She had one on her right groin region. It was a heart, and a lower back butterfly. And on the right calf, some sort of scribbles. I don't know what. I'd be curious to find that out. There is no deformity or abnormal mobility of the extremities. Resuscitative marks are not present over the precordium. The chest has no increased anterior posterior diameter. The abdomen is not unusual. The genitalia are those of an adult female. Examination of the back and buttocks reveals no significant injuries. Examination of the skin reveals healing wounds of right hemiface and anterior neck, right shoulder, left upper chest and upper extremities, consistent with the superficial thermal injuries. Injury date was the 5th of August, 2022. Trauma comments: the right kidney laceration, sternal fracture, slightly displaced T12. T12 is the 12th vertebra in the mid-back. And postmortem computed tomography, like x-rays and ultrasound examinations. Cerebral edema with hypoperfusion changes, which is a brain swelling accompanied by reduced blood flow in the brain. Endotracheal tube in place in trachea. That was her breathing tube because she was on life support for as long as she was. There are calcifications of the left anterior descending artery. And I asked a professional, and those were pre-existing, the calcification of her left anterior artery. And also gunshot residue, GSR, not requested. Toxicology, now this was interesting to me. Well, I guess because this is autopsy, toxicology wasn't requested because she was already off the accident. You know what I mean? They did toxicology when they brought her in, but in the autopsy, they didn't need to because she'd been in the hospital for several days. So nothing else was requested. Now, here is a opinion. Okay. This is by the interim chief medical examiner, Coroner. And it says the 53-year-old woman, Anne Celeste Heche, died of inhalation and thermal injuries. A sternal fracture due to blunt trauma also significantly contributed to her death. According to reports, Ms. Heche was driving a vehicle that collided with a house. The house caught on fire and she was trapped in the vehicle for approximately 30 minutes prior to first responders extricating her. Prior to this collision, she was involved in 2 prior vehicle collisions involving a vehicle and a garage. Now, this autopsy report is redacted considerably. I mean, look at this whole area is just completely blacked out. And I was curious about that because autopsies are public record, but it has to do, it's a possibility. My friend, the expert, said, I can only surmise that there were people named that the department felt they needed to protect, or medical history, specifically mental health information. So Anne Heche, we know, had mental health issues. That's a good portion of why that was redacted. And it says she was pronounced brain dead on the 11th of August, 2022. External examinations revealed healing superficial wounds on the right side of the face, neck, right shoulder, upper chest and upper extremities consistent with superficial thermal injuries involving an approximate total burn surface area of 12%. There were changes on the right side of her face and left upper chest consistent with skin grafting. They were saying these are healing wounds because she'd been alive for quite a while afterwards. So when they're saying they're healing wounds, yeah, the wounds occurred during the accident, all these burns, but they were healing because it had been several days. So it was confusing to me when I first read this because I didn't understand why they would be labeled as healing, but this was a considerable amount of time later. External examination revealed healing superficial wounds to the right side of the face, neck, right shoulder, upper left chest, upper extremities, consistent with superficial thermal injuries involving an approximate total burn surface area of 12%. There were changes on the right side of the face and upper left or upper chest, consistent with skin grafting. Toxicology testing on hospital admission, blood detected benzoylecgonine, which is a metabolite of cocaine. So it's a compound when cocaine starts to break down, it shows up as that. So cocaine doesn't show up, but it shows up as it's like, I believe morphine is a metabolite of heroin. Heroin shows up as morphine. That was an issue, I think, in River Phoenix's autopsy, if I'm remembering that correctly. Inhalation injuries, including inhalation of products of combustion, cause changes to the respiratory system that decreases the intake of oxygen needed to sustain life. The lack of oxygen causes anoxic brain injury that causes the brain to swell and can cause sudden death. Anoxic brain injury, despite the name, is not the result of physical trauma to the body, but is an injury due to the lack of oxygen. The sternal fracture she sustained is expected to be painful while breathing when she was in her vehicle, further complicating oxygenation and therefore also significantly contributed to her death. And then they say benzoylecgonine was detected in the admission blood specimen, blood taken when she was first arrived at the hospital on the 5th. And this is an inactive metabolite of cocaine. I mentioned that. The urine drug specimen that detected fentanyl was obtained after she received treatment at the hospital and therefore is consistent with therapeutic use. This is supported by the lack of fentanyl in the blood specimen drawn at the admission to the hospital. Cannabinoids, a cannabis product, were detected in the urine, but not the admission blood specimen, and is consistent with prior use, but not at the time of injury. So the manner of death is accident. So I don't know if that means medical or marijuana or cannabis product or recreational, that I'm not sure of. The manner of death is accidental. Now this page has more of the information. It says it's the 16th of August. She died on the 11th. Autopsy was performed on the 16th of August. Immediate cause was inhalation and thermal injuries. An external fracture due to blunt trauma. Auto versus house. She was the driver, causing structural fire. Skin grafting of head, neck, chest, upper extremities. And it says in here that, of course, this is the autopsy, so not toxicology, no toxicology was requested. Although there are toxicology results here it must have been the original one, the blood screening. There's no alcohol. Cocaine and metabolics were presumptive positive, is what it says. Fentanyl, not detected. Marijuana, presumptive positive. Methamphetamine, not detected. Opiates, cocaine, morphine, not detected. Opiates, hydrocodone, and hydromorphone, non-detected. But the cannabinoids were detected. This is the illustration, and it shows where the burns were on her body. Here's the tattoos. We're talking about the scribble and the butterfly on her lower back. And this is where the heart was, just by her groin area. And the healing wounds, so remember, it was about a week after the accident, so there was time involved, and her wounds were healing, although she wasn't receptive. I guess she was in the passenger. Well, she was still, can you imagine that? She was in the driver's seat, but she was trying to get through the passenger seat. She was there 30 minutes before they could get to her because the house was on fire and they had to put the fire out. And then, because she drove literally into this house. I mean, she propelled off the street into this house. They were going 80 miles an hour, I think, and no skid marks, went straight into the house. So she went in the house and it was on fire. So once they got the fire out, they had to make sure that it was going to be safe for them to go in there and to rescue her. And she was alive during this whole time. That must have been just awful. They're talking about the injuries to her face, healing extremities on her nose, yellow waxy abrasion on her forehead, and skin graft over on this side of her face, and a healing wound. Okay, so the case report, some of this is repetitive, but this is, I'm not reading the same document twice. Anne Heche gives her address in Los Angeles. They mentioned the tattoos again, the hip, the heart, and the scribbles. Now, there's also a lot of redacted stuff. She was pronounced dead in the hospital in West Hills. Place of injury, private residence, literally in the private residence on Walgrove Avenue in Los Angeles. Date of death is the 11th of August, 2022. According to the reported information, on the 5th of August, 2022, at 10:55 hours, the decedent drove her vehicle at a high rate of speed into a private residence. The vehicle and the residence were on fire. The decedent was trapped in the vehicle for approximately 30 minutes before she was extricated by the fire department. Dr. Malcolm Smith pronounced the first brain death on August 11th, 2022 at 18:38, that would be 6:38 p.m. And the other doctor pronounced her second brain death at 18:48, 6:48 p.m. So she was pronounced dead, brain dead at 6:38 p.m. She was pronounced brain dead again 10 minutes later at 6:48 p.m. So I asked my friend, the expert, the former chief of special investigations for the LA County Coroner, thank you, Craig Harvey. So he told me two pronouncements of brain death usually precede organ tissue procurement. California law requires two separate pronouncements of death, brain death, to establish clinical death. It's not unusual, and the two separate times recorded follow existing law. So I had to ask, and he's always been very kind about humoring me. So again, this is the description. This is done by the traffic investigator Osborne, and the investigation on the 11th of August 2022 at 20:32 hours, that would be 8:32 p.m., nurse so-and-so reported this accident death to the coroner intermediate typist clerk. The nurse reported that the decedent is a 53-year-old female that was transported to the hospital on August 5th after being involved with a motor vehicle accident. The decedent was at the UCLA Ronald Reagan Medical Center and was transported to West Hills Hospital Medical Center on the 8th of August, 2022 for a higher level of care. The decedent sustained second and third degree burns from the accident. The decedent tested positive for benzodiazepine, fentanyl, cocaine, and cannabinoid. Next of kin has been notified. Brain death was pronounced at 6:37 p.m. by this doctor, and 10 minutes later by the other doctor. The injury was the private residence on Walgrove Avenue in Los Angeles. Her death at West Hills Hospital. Informant witness statements. This is, again, it's going over exactly what the incident itself. LAPD investigator provided me with the following information. On the 5th of August, 2022 at approximately 10:55 a.m., the decedent was traveling eastbound on Preston Way when she collided with the curb, hedge, and a house located at 1766 Walgrove Avenue. The impact caused the vehicle and the house to engulf in flames. When the Los Angeles Fire Department arrived on the scene, the decedent had her legs on the driver's side of the vehicle with her upper body on the passenger side. It's just horrific to think of what she went through. The decedent was the registered owner of the vehicle, which was a blue Mini Cooper. LA Fire Department personnel described the decedent as being in a, quote, altered state. The decedent was subsequently transported by ambulance to UCLA Medical Center for additional medical treatment. It was reported that the decedent was involved in 2 separate misdemeanor hit-and-run traffic collisions approximately 10 minutes before the collision on Walgrove Avenue. A witness described the decedent's vehicle traveling approximately 80 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour residential area. You saw that footage of it being picked up on that Ring camera, and it was, just never touched her brakes and launched right into that house, which is, what people go to sometimes with that conspiracy business. Fascinating. I don't usually go for those, but this one was like a rabbit hole. So a witness described the decedent's vehicle as traveling approximately 80 in a 25. Officers did not observe any pre-impact skid marks before colliding with the residence. The vehicle penetrated 3 interior walls of the residence. LAFD, the fire department, may have taken as much as 30 minutes to extract the decedent due to the limited space and the lack of structural integrity of the residence. Consequently, the decedent may have inhaled a lot of smoke inside from the burns she sustained. Again, a lot of redaction here. Don't know exactly, they say protecting identities or mental health details. Dr. Malcolm Smith pronounced the first brain death at 6:38 p.m. Dr. Sofroni pronounced the second brain death at 6:48 p.m. The scene description, the death occurred at a hospital. Coroner scene investigation is not required, so they didn't need to go and take photographs or anything like that. Evidence, there's no medical or physical evidence to collect. Body examination, the decedent is an adult Caucasian female seen in the Department of the Medical Examiner crypt, and she is nude. No medical appliances are in place. She has red skin discoloration to the forehead, right side of her face, right neck area, right shoulder, right chest, left shoulder, and the auxiliary area, right forearm and left hand. A sutured incision along the midline of the torso due to organ procurement is observed. No scars are observed. A tattoo of a heart on her right hip is observed. Identification, fingerprints identified the decedent as Anne Heche on the 14th of August. Next of kin notification, and they mentioned they spoke to someone via telephone and verified they were notified of the death. Tissue donation is, again, it's redacted. And lastly is this last page, and it's sort of this is a handwritten synopsis, talks about the medical center in West Hills. The pronouncement of death is done by those 2 people 10 minutes apart. Microbiology results were attached, which I showed you. Toxicology screen attached. That's Anne Heche's autopsy report. I really honestly was expecting it to be one of those that are, 50 pages, but it's surprisingly compact considering it was so complicated with her being on life support. I thought you'd be interested to see some of the footage that I took a couple of days after the accident of the scene of the home that Anne Heche drove into. And of course, there's footage of her car being pulled out, and her on an ambulance would have been right in front. This, I don't know, several years ago when I lived in England, in England, television programs used to run probably almost a year. They used to run in England about a year after they showed in England. So the Ellen DeGeneres show made a lot of ripples, made a lot of news because it was her coming out episode. Now the thing about it is, in America, the coming out episode ruined Ellen's career for the longest time. But a year later, it aired in England, and it was big news in England because it was a big deal. So my ex actually hosted the Ellen DeGeneres coming out episode, a night of television honoring gay people, and the guests of honor were Ellen DeGeneres and Anne Heche. So I went to dinner with Ellen and Anne afterwards, and Ellen, I would say, was really sweet, defeated at the time, very much so. And Anne Heche was there, and she was bright and cheery and commanding attention, as much attention as she could possibly get. It was unusual. I mean, it was a quiet dinner that we went to. It was about 10 or 12 people there, including Ellen's mother, Betty. But I remember Anne getting up and like shouting things to be funny, and just sort of, like I said, commanding attention. And it was uncomfortable at times. And I don't know if Anne Heche, how she's going to pull out of this accident. But this is certainly where it happened. As I said, this must have been the path that the firefighters had cleared to put their equipment through. You can still smell smoke over here.
Breaking news and a sad update to a story we've been following for several days now. Emmy-winning actress Anne Heche has died after being taken off life support today. Heche was declared brain dead Friday after crashing her car into a Vista home August 5th that caught fire. She had been on life support while an organ recipient could be found. Heche rose to Hollywood stardom in the 1990s in movies and television. Her success was contrasted with periods of personal turmoil, and she often spoke candidly of her mental health struggles. Heche is survived by her two sons. Anne Heche was 53.
It's sad. It's sad what happened to her, and she is at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And you could probably go down that conspiracy rabbit hole if you wanted to. Something about a project that she was working on, and but they'll always, when it comes to something unusual, and her death was certainly unusual. There's sometimes it's easy. The easiest explanation people don't want to accept, but you can't say it was run of the mill. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. And until next time.
You heard me.